So we are back with Dr. Scott Walter. Can I call you Doctor? It's a PhD.
Yeah, if you want, or just
mechanical.
Scott. Yeah. Now, you do know how you pronounce PhD, don't you?
Fud? No?
Yes,
Fud?
absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely, that's how it's pronounced.
Interesting. He's a mechanical and aerospace engineer, a robot offline programming pioneer, a factory simulation expert, which makes him perfect to live in this simulation we call the real world. It's pretty good. Little bit of repetition, not always super convincing, but I like it. I'm Brian. Welcome to My Tesla Weekend. So, Scott, what I wanted to ask you about today, and guys, if you haven't seen part one, there is a part one to this. We don't like to run too long. Some folks can't handle it. They have attention spans worse than mine. So what today we're talking about is the roadmap, where we're at with Optimus, what steps are needed, and how long it's going to take to get them there. So we've got a pre-release candidate. Is that fair to say?
Pre-release candidate, yeah, probably like 0.9.
Yeah,
release. Not quite a 1.
Strong alpha.
Yep. Strong alpha, yep.
Yep. So the next step is getting to a release candidate. Is that right?
Yes, or I think what he used the term production candidate. But yeah, it's sort of the same thing. Something they think is ready to be manufactured because they are testing it out and they're trying to look at the manufacturability. And it looks like they're getting ready to ramp up with a target date of November-ish to have the first production candidate. Now, whether that means they really start ramping production or it's like, well, this is what we think it's going to look like, let's check it out, and it starts falling over, then they're going to say, oh, we've got to go back and fix something first before we start ramping up. But assuming they don't have any problems there, why would you have a production line for a product which doesn't do what it's supposed to do?
Do they have a production line?
They're getting ready to. They're hiring people for that. It looks like Sparks because they're hiring a production manager. And if you look at the requirements in there, they all kind of fit the bill of someone that would be putting up a line and getting ready to ramp up to produce a product. So,
but Sparks is also going to be building the semi,
and they build the batteries.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a lot of excess space out there.
They have a lot of land. What they don't have is a lot of people. It's a tough city in which to recruit, but it is a lot closer to Fremont than any of the other out-of-state factories.
Yes.
So what is missing for the production candidate? We talked about actuators.
Right.
We said the software probably has some ways to go. What else is missing? What else changes between today and production candidate?
Is that you finally have the brain. You really have that up because there are sort of 3 parts to getting everything on a humanoid bot going. One is it needs to be mobile, hopefully walking. So you need something that's able to walk. And while that's challenging, that's mostly solved. Some people say that they still need to refine a little bit more because it seems to be a bit stiff and a bit slow, but it's able to walk around and do that. Then there's the other, the arms are simple. I mean, we've been able to do arms for the longest time, so that's not a big deal. Trickiest part is the hands and making sure you get the dexterity and you like the way the hands are, can actually do all the tasks that you want it to do. So that's one of the things you want to have on there. So that's sort of like the second part of your triangle. But the big part, the big missing piece is the part up here, which is the brain. Without the brain, it's useless. Now you need to have some decent mechanics to go along with it. If you've got a really lousy mechanical design, you probably won't be able to do very much. So you got to make sure it sort of fits the needs of it. But without the brains, it's kind of a nice plaything, showpiece, but you're not clear that you're doing anything useful with it. And that's always been the problems with robots because we've been able to automate really quite well for decades now. Robots are not a new thing. They've been out there for a long time. The problem is they're very hard to teach them to do the task that they want. Not so much hard, but in many cases kind of tedious, and all they can do is be very repetitive, and your environment has to be extremely structured. And so when I was doing offline programming, the whole idea was trying to teach the robot without actually being on the floor with the robot, but doing it in a virtual world. And hopefully doing that to speed up the amount of time that it takes to program a robot to do certain operations. So ideally, it means if it takes me, a week to program the robot on the shop floor, but I then bring it into a computer and I have all the computer magic and everything else that goes on there, maybe I can do it in an hour or two. So I'm saving a lot of time. but still I'm the person who is figuring out those tasks, and they're very repetitive tasks. And yeah, there may be a little bit of flexibility in that sometimes, and rather than the part being here, the part's over there because you've got a camera system that tells you that's where it's there. But it's not like it's really clever. Now we want something that's able to really think like a human being. And this is the first time that the technology is converging together that we can really think about that. 10 years ago, we could have built the mechanics, we could have done all those other things. The missing piece was the AI, the brain. So if they're looking at November, it means they're happy with the mechanical design. They really think they can ramp it up. Everything is kind of there. It's going to do what they want. And it must mean they think by that point, they will have enough training data that is worthwhile to build a lot of these things. Otherwise, they're going to be taking up space in closets and warehouses everywhere while they wait. And would you do that?
No, I think that would terrify the janitors.
Yeah. Now, there are a lot of Tesla showrooms, that's for sure. And they've talked about making them display units. So maybe that's the whole idea. They're just ramping it up for the Tesla showrooms.
Boy, if the simple task they could do is grab you a cup of water reliably, yeah, put one in every showroom.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. I mean, right now, they're just thinking about putting it in a glass box that you can go up and look at it, and that's already attracting people. But imagine if it really did that. How many people would be coming out on the weekends with a whole family looking at that?
Just to get a cup of water.
Just to get a cup of water, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I know recently you put out a call on Twitter. If you're not following at Going Ballistic 5, you should. It's a lot of fun. You put out a call saying, I want to count how many of these bot mock-ups or candidates or whatever they prototypes are out in the real world. Have you gotten feedback?
I haven't got any, and I'm kind of trying to guess. I think there's one permanently on display now at Peterson.
I think there is.
And I think that might have been the one that they rolled out on the stage, or one very similar to that. I think there's one in Asia. I don't know if it's always on display. There was one kind of in Shanghai and Korea, but I assume it's the same one, and it jetted around. Is there one in London right now? Because wasn't last weekend there was some
the
Tesla event?
Speed Fest, some kind of motor speed day.
Yeah.
Now they also had the Tesla pop-up there, the trailer display thing. So it could be part of that. I saw that same display at Fully Charged in Farnborough. I did not see the bot there at that time. So that could be a same one, or it could be a different one.
Yeah. So it seems like there's one maybe in the European theater, and whether that one is like trading between China or not, or whether it's a separate one, who knows. And then there's one spotted in New York. So there's at the Tesla showroom in New York. I don't think that's the one that's in Peterson. So we get an idea, and they're not fully actuated. And like say the actuators are dead inside. It's just kind of the candidates that they're putting together. They're printing everything out so everyone can look at it. But they have talked about putting them in Tesla showrooms as a display model. And does that just mean New York, LA, and San Francisco? Or are they really talking about hitting lots and lots of places? And then you start counting that up, and then you start thinking, all right, where are they coming from? Is it like the scrap? Because think about it. They probably are producing a lot of these things like, that's not very good, but we don't really have to throw it away because no one's going to know it's actually a bad unit. We can just stick it together and, hey, we got something.
Right. Yeah, this was a 0.15, and we're on to 0.20. And if anybody has sightings of the bot, I need you to post a picture on Twitter and at Going Ballistic 5, at 4K Podcast. We'd both love to see them.
And a date.
And a date. And a location.
Location, right. Yeah. Now, if there's any like distinguishing features, like, tattoos, scars, anything like that, I think I saw on the back of one of them something that almost looked like a label. At least when they had the 5 bots that were going out there, there was something that it looked like there was a label somewhere that we couldn't get the resolution in there. But if they have a display, go around and say, is there something that we can see your serial number? And then we can start tracking them all and get an idea. Are we seeing the same bot in many different locations, or are we seeing the different bots? So anything like, and it might be like, if you noticed in the line dancing Tesla bots, remember that one?
Yes.
There was one of them who was clearly the leader. You know who that one was?
No, the front center?
The front center, and you know why?
No.
That was the only bot with the belt buckle.
There you go. Because the one at Peterson has the buckle.
Yes.
Most of the Peterson exhibit is the materials that were shown at Cyber Rodeo. They were just crated up and sent there because they're too awesome to get rid of. They had the big Cyber Rodeo, the big Giga Texas Neon, I don't know if you've seen it, but it is a wonderful exhibit. I got to check it out on opening day in a room where I was the most famous I will probably ever be. Because there ain't no place on earth I'm more famous than standing in front of the Cybertruck on opening day. It was pretty fun. I ended up having to put up I said, yeah, people kept talking. So, no, you got to show the video. So I posted it, and like 11 people decided to say hello during my video. So that was fun.
Wow.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Yeah,
I'm not famous enough to get annoyed. That's for sure.
Now, as far as the roadmap, of course, the bot has to be less than like $100,000 or $200,000 per piece before you want to actually start producing this thing.
For sure.
You have any estimates, your own guesstimates on how much it would cost?
Well under 50 is my guess. Excluding the chips, because those are, if it's just using hardware 4, we've already got economies of scale. But just say 1,000 or 2 there. I don't know what their cost is, but it's not unreasonable. The actuators, they're going to build those at scale. Those will be affordable. Everything else is just stamped, cast, and machined. It's not off the shelf, but it's the sort of thing that I worked in fabrication for a summer in my teen years, and I worked another summer in plating. So I know a little bit about small fab. And our shop 100% could have done all the metal work for this. Not the casting. We could have done all the stamping and machining. And our equipment was cheap. We probably only had one machine that was over $500,000, but most of the equipment in there was under $100,000. And this is in the 90s. The machines have actually gotten cheaper since then due to economies of scale. These are, and then of course some molded plastic. Tesla's got plastics molding experience, and those are cheap products to begin with. So honestly, I'm thinking it'll cost them at scale like $30,000 or less. What do you think? Okay,
so when we're talking about at scale, are we talking about the COGS, or when you start looking at the overall cost of R&D? So if you just look at
exclusive of R&D. Exclusive of R&D.
So if you try to add up all the atoms that are in there, and the majority of the atoms are aluminum, it's about $120, $125 in just material. So that's the low end. They can't build it for cheaper than that unless they can source aluminum cheaper. Because we know that they're not making it from titanium because they said so. And they're not making it from carbon composite or anything like that. No exotic materials. The whole idea is to make sure it's very cheap to manufacture. So the biggest cost item, like we know how much the batteries are going to cost. So the batteries, if I were to buy them from Amazon, it's 140 2170s, would cost around $800. So that means how much of the battery is going to cost Tesla? I mean, I would just think half of that. So when I do my spreadsheet, it's like, this is how much it would cost Scott to buy these things. The castings, if you go to a company that makes castings for you, how much are they going to do based on weight and everything else? I add all that stuff up, and I had a hard time getting past 8,000. Now, the only thing in there is I don't know how much it's going to cost for the actuators. So I'm guesstimating, because you can go online and look at a lot of actuators that are sort of similar to what they might have, but you got to remember, these are maybe not like your normal actuators. You can get those online from like $25, $50, $100, somewhere around there. Now, assuming that they can manufacture them around there, around that $100, you're looking around $7,000. But if you double that, then it starts getting up around 10 or something like that. But if they're more costly, if like every one of them is a plaid motor, then the cost is going to start to go up, and it's going to start to get closer to that 30,000 range. So that is where the cost is. It's not, we know, but I would say the most technically complex thing is the chip. And that's the only thing Tesla can't build, but it doesn't matter. They already have the scales. It's not something that, since they already have it internally, and in the end, it's pretty cheap. It's going to be under $1,000. And, they get some cameras and stuff like that they're probably buying from somewhere else. But everything else they're able to make, and the stuff they can't make, is because they can buy it so cheap somewhere else. So that's the lower limit. And then the question is, at how much does it have to cost for it to be worthwhile to Tesla?
Yes. Yeah. And I don't think I'm in the camp that says they might not sell them, they might only lease them. And there is infinite money there, especially compared to sales. The only thing they would need is the cash on hand to build them, to be able to float the difference until the monthly revenue equals the cost of what they actually paid. And they happen to have that amount of money, in my opinion. The skeptics of the bot have said, oh, wow, look, they built the same thing other people built 20 years ago. But Asimo was waiting for technology to catch up, and it's a dead product. It was cute, but compute wasn't there. And
it's also too small. It's pretty short.
It's very small.
You're not going to be able to put it on the factory floor.
No. You could put it on the Keebler factory floor, but they don't always land, Scott. It's okay.
Yeah, I got it.
I know you got it.
Your demographic gets it. Don't worry.
They get it. The big difference that I hear you saying that Tesla has over everyone else in this space, especially Boston Dynamics, is this is being designed for manufacturability. Is that correct?
Yes. For scalability. Yeah. So they can.
For scalability. Because just like how Tesla chose not to use LiDAR because it's fiddly, expensive, and impossible to scale, where vision is not. And the thing that really impressed me at AI Day 1 or 2 was that they used the crash test simulation software. I guarantee you nobody else was doing that. The
Correct.
software, we have it. It's right here. It works really well. No, they just overbuilt it and hoped for the best. And I don't think they even know which parts are overbuilt.
Mm-hmm. And actually, if you go back to that part where they did the crash test, and you look very closely at the PowerPoint slides that are up there, everyone's looking at that part of it. But the title is very interesting. It was like simulation for manufacturability. Because then Malcolm says, we're not going to use exotic materials like titanium and carbon composite. We're going to use like flexible things like plastic. And because of that, we have to understand the modes of vibration and everything else. Remember like how the robots are jiggling around because they're looking at all the different dynamic modes of vibration that you're going to have in there. But at the same time, they want to find out when it falls down, is it going to crash and break? But he was like underscoring the whole idea of doing it at scale. And he talked about, we want to build tens of thousands, maybe millions of these, he says that. Yeah. So they are thinking large, very big. And I would say a couple of advantages they have over Boston Dynamics and a lot of the other companies is not just the fact that they have the AI, but they have the business case to justify their costs. So they're the only one of them that does not need an external customer because they are the customer. The others, they need to start selling it before the venture capital runs out. They need that; those funds have to come in. And Tesla does not have to sell one of these bots to actually make money on it because in the end, it goes to the margins, which everyone is complaining about. You start putting that in there, it's going to be something else. And then, of course, if they want to, they can start leasing it to their sub-suppliers. And then when they get enough, they can start leasing it to the outside. And then I have 2 questions for you, Brian.
Oh, I'm ready.
Is how much do you think the Tesla bot would be worth if you could buy it or if you could lease it? So if Tesla was going to sell it, how much would they sell it for?
If it has the ability to work at the pace of the slowest entry-level worker, except 24 hours a day, I would say a minimum of $100,000.
To purchase price, right?
And that is for a minimum viable product. And for leasing, boy, I mean, especially early on where it's all business applications instead of like home use, I would say the minimum would be $1,000 a month. What do you think?
1,000 a month. Yeah, I was thinking more like 1,000 a week. You might almost be able to do it. And
maybe
the use case is going to depend upon where it's being used. If it's a business that can use it 3 shifts, it's easily worth that much. But even 1 shift, depending upon the kind of worker you have, I mean, that's 1 shift is easily 50,000 a year. So yes, that could be, and I think I've heard other people put those things out there. But the other thing is like how much Tesla could sell it for. Because if they're building these bots for under 10K, they could potentially sell them for 15 or 20K. The thing
Yes.
is, would it be the fiscally responsible, fiduciary responsible thing
Right.
for them to sell it that much? Because there's going to be a limited supply. And if you were able to grab one, there's one of two things you're going to do. One is that you're going to turn around and sell it for a hefty profit right away.
Right.
Or you're actually going to put it to work and make a lot of money that way. So in some ways, that means Tesla is sort of missing out on a little bit of the revenue by selling it for way too less than what it should be. And they already learned that lesson during COVID with, a lot of people that were picking up the cars and flipping them for 20 right away. And so they're like, we're going to put a stop to that or raise our prices or do something else. So, I mean, the question is, when the first bot comes out, and if they sell it, would they sell it for 100 or 200? I mean, that's a good question.
Well, I think the answer is Tesla already uses dynamic pricing. And just like hotels, concerts, all those sorts of events, the demand dictates the price. And we will adjust it every single day if we need to. Other manufacturers do not have that luxury. They do not get to see the kinds of numbers. And when they see what little they see of sales data coming in, it's not in real time. It doesn't reflect orders. And you don't always see the price at which an item was sold. So it paints a very incomplete picture where Tesla has unlimited control of that data in ways that they're able to capitalize on. So it's going to be, and again, this is for a product that you and I just, in our scenario that we're discussing, is only as capable as an entry-level worker. It's not slower than the slowest human, but it's not somebody you're looking to give a raise to right away, and it's still worth a fortune.
Right.
Now, have you ever had an opportunity to machine any metals to understand why titanium is such a bear? Because at our shops, we only went up to stainless, and that's
already hard.
Unpleasant.
I machined aluminum. That was good enough. I mean,
yeah,
and
aluminum's wonderful.
Yes, I intentionally designed the part to not be made out of stainless because I didn't feel like doing it. But
right.
Aluminum was able to do it.
For aluminum, my first job was deburring, taking the rough edges off, and you could do it easily in a single swipe, and it just all day, very fast. With stainless, you'd have to give it 2-3 passes and put it down because it's starting to overheat. If you're putting grain on stainless, it would overheat. And I asked, do we ever do titanium? Well, this was in the 90s. Titanium was in very short supply because the Soviets still controlled it. And I guess this is still during the Soviet Union. They had most of the world's supply of it. But the answer was, you think stainless is hard to work with. Titanium is just unbearable. So, yeah, and also if you're manufacturing 11D kajillion of something, you're going to run low on titanium, but you're not going to run low on steel and aluminum. The only way you can get it into the customer's hand cheaper is if you require them to bring in all their old beer cans.
Oh, that would be one way. Yeah. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
So, in your mind, when will we see, for example, let's say 1,000 of these robots performing tasks that would have otherwise been done by a human?
Probably early 2025.
Wow.
We could be starting to see it in 24, some of it, but you're saying up to 1,000.
Right, because that's
probably around that point.
That's the beginning of volume, really.
That's the beginning, and
you're past proof of concept.
Yeah, and the question is, how many have they pumped out at that point? Because they could be. That line is not going to be like a Cybertruck ramp up or anything else. I mean, it seems like once you've got that design and stuff in there, and whatever you've decided your production volume is, you should be able to get it ramped up almost in a matter of weeks.
It's so simple compared to an automobile.
Yeah, it really is.
So compact.
It is. The challenge is just going to be getting enough people to go to Sparks. And if that becomes a problem, then Optimus just starts becoming the workforce to put it together. No one else wants to show up. That's what I would think. So you could, and then, the thing is looking what those use cases are. So we know there's my famous expression, the low-hanging fruit, and there's the fruit that's hanging so low it's on the ground and rotting. So we have a lot of those applications already within the factory floor. And those are the simple ones of picking up the simple pieces of sheet metal from a bin and then putting it over here and dropping it in place. And we've seen examples of that were the Shanghai video, the Shanghai speed video of an operator doing that famously and missing his cue and jumping into the cell before he was supposed to and stopping the bots and everything and having to come out and do a reset. Optimus won't do it. And we can see the pace of that is very, very easy. Now, it could be that Optimus is able to do that task, or you need two Optimists because he was actually tending two cells. The requirement was so slow that a human operator can do it kind of very easily without exhausting them. I mean, it's mind-numbing because you're doing it for 8 hours, but it's something that you can keep the pace up, and an Optimist can do that. The question is, how many tasks are there like that in the factory that suddenly the absorption rate becomes a problem? It's like, well, I mean, we've used up all the low-hanging fruit. Now we've got to go up a little bit, and whether the dexterity becomes a little bit more. And the way I'm looking at it is that entry-level worker at Tesla, which I think is $25 an hour, if you got 3 shifts, that one operation, that one guy who's doing that is costing you about $200,000 a year.
Right.
Just that one operation for that one guy.
Right.
And you say, wow, that worker's getting paid $200,000. No. There's 3 of them. That's the whole idea, is that you have to staff it around the clock, but you do it with the one Optimus. So even if the Optimus bot cost you $200,000 to build, by the end of that 1 year, you've got your money back. Now, the only question is whether one Optimus bot can do that or whether you need to have 2 in there. But you start running those things, and if Optimus is actually, as like you say, the same level as an entry-level worker, you're already saving probably $100 million a year. Right. Very easily, maybe even more. So it starts paying for itself really quickly, and then you start seeing it going up there. And the only question of that low-hanging fruit comes down to 2 things: how clever the bot is, whether they really are able to teach these complex tasks, and how good the hands are. Do the hands have the dexterity? But I think they do. People think, well, doesn't it have to be a concert pianist? Doesn't it have to have like the dexterity of a surgeon? It's like, have you ever gone on the shop floor? Look at people's hands. What are they wearing? They're wearing gloves.
Yeah.
Immediately, the dexterity of your hands have been cut in half because you were wearing these protective equipment that prevents you to do it, which means your bot only has to be as dexterous as someone who is wearing those mittens.
Who is also not a concert pianist, I would like to add.
Yes, it's not in the job description. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that actually helps me understand the expectations a little better. Because in my mind, I was thinking that too. And we've seen the example with the egg, for example. That sure was nice of him to crack it on the floor. That didn't bother my OCD at all. So that's,
really?
That's crazy.
Okay. So, I mean, and they had the other eggs around there. And of course, I think you've seen my famous example, what we call feeding the cuckoos at the robot zoo. And that's the entry level kind of task we were talking about. You've got the robots behind a cage, and the robots need material. And the other way the material can get in there is a human has to feed it to them, like a slab of meat going into the lions. And in order to do that, you've got the series of kind of cages and slots and stuff like that you want to kind of put it in, and you want to get out of the way before the lions come. So you've got that thing that's kind of going on. And so you've got a human operator going down. It's like, Optimus can do that right away. I saw that right away. And right after I saw that and had noted that, Elon said that's exactly what they're going to do.
Exactly.
So,
and think how much more efficient a factory can be when the OSHA concerns have been moved back one whole operation. Inside the cage can be dangerous. Humans don't go in there.
Yes.
And for that matter, one thing I've talked about on previous videos is all of the applications for these bots that are not done by any humans right now because they're too dangerous. Biohazard in public in some locations.
Yes.
Deep sea cleanup. Let's get the trash off the ocean floor. These guys could do it. Reforesting the desert. Why not? Humans would struggle with that because it is a punishing environment. And
and now if you look at the factory floor, again, going back to that Shanghai example, look a little bit closer and look at the robot that the human operator is feeding. You know what that robot does with a part?
Stamp?
No, feeds it to the other robots.
Right, he feeds it to the other robots.
And so that's all that robot is doing because that robot is coordinated enough that it's able to get in there without worrying about getting hit. So they need to make that buffer between it. And so now what you can say is with Optimus, it's like, well, wait a minute, let's cut out the middleman. Let's get rid of those bots, and Optimus can go right into the cell, direct feed, not having to have some sort of exchange mechanism going on there. And so again, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head that suddenly we can reshape the landscape of the factory floor, because now we can have these human-like things going into areas they were never allowed to go into before during manufacturing. And now you can press the cell.
I got to tell you, Scott, you have made me excited about the bot once again. I've had skeptics say, "Oh, all these optimistic things you're saying about Optimus, they can't come true in 2 years or 5 years. It'll be 10 years." And I say, 10 years to unlock a $3 trillion opportunity? That's very bullish news to me, my friend.
Yeah.
If that is your skeptical worst case scenario, why are you not?
Yeah. Let's go back. Do you remember when the first AI day was?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a year,
remember the
almost
date?
2 years.
Almost. It hasn't even been 2 years. No, it was like
September
October 19th. I have it kind of here. It's like
October 19th.
October 19th, 2020. Not even 2 years. It hasn't even been 1 year since AI Day 2. And we see how much is going on. Now, of course, when I saw the AI Day 1, I'm figuring also, that's probably going to take them 5 or 10. I mean, it takes a while to put together a robot that's going to walk. There's a lot that they have to learn there. And then to see how much they did in 1 year, like, wow, they're actually more optimistic than my initial projections were. So they're moving very fast. And that's why I think that, so what if it takes 2 or 3 years? That's still extremely fast. But I think they may be going faster than that, because the missing piece has always been the brain, the bot's brain. The control systems are pretty good. The control systems are just wonderful now. That's why you're seeing a lot of people that can have these really nice walking robots that are very stable, because of all the groundbreaking work that has been done for the past 30, 40 years with Osmo and others to figure it out. But everyone knows it. It's being taught in universities. There's plenty of researchers. All that is publicly available. So they're just consuming it. And that's why they were able to so quickly get a bot going up. And everyone said, it took these guys 30 years. It's going to take them 30 years too. No, it didn't. It didn't even take them 30 months.
Well, I hope that you are correct. I hope the March of Nines is not as punishing as it has been for FSD. But I look forward to finding out, and I hope that in the next couple months we'll have another AI Day and get some very exciting news. And we will talk more about it then or sooner, for sure. Scott, I do want to thank you for coming and hanging out with me, giving us all the information, all of the information. And in the comments, guys, what did we forget? What did we miss? What did we misunderstand? Let us know. And for the rest of you guys, subscribe, like, do all the usual things. And stay tuned, stay juicy, and I can't wait to hear from robots as clever as Scott on the Flip Flop.